6 months passed after I changed my will, and for the first time in a long time, life felt like mine again. My days took on a gentle rhythm at Willow Grove, the independent living community where kindness wasn't rationed, where my name wasn't spoken with impatience, and where people didn't look through me like I was furniture gathering dust. I joined the morning book circle, even though half the time we read more gossip than novels. I learned how to paint small watercolor birds, though most of mine looked like they'd flown through a storm. I met Helen, a retired teacher with a wicked sense of humor, who could make me laugh so hard I'd have to dab my eyes. And every evening, someone knocked on my door to say, "Dinner's ready, Blake. Come join us." No obligation, no expectations, just presence. It was the first real home I'd had since Jake died. Then came the day I had circled on my calendar, the one JR said the official notices would be mailed out. The legal letters informing Mark and Tanya that they were no longer beneficiaries, not of the house, not of the land, not of the savings, not of anything tied to my name. At exactly 11:17 a.m., my phone started buzzing. 16 missed calls, all from Mark. I didn't answer the first, or the 10th, or the last. Their urgency didn't move me. It only confirmed something I wished wasn't true, that they only remembered me when something was taken from them. By the next morning, the email arrived. Subject: "I'm sorry, Mom, but at least let us keep the garden." I read it once, then again. It wasn't an apology, it was a negotiation wrapped in regret. Words about misunderstanding, about stress, about how the airport thing had been blown out of proportion. Then came the part they really cared about, the land behind the old house, the garden they claimed the kids loved, the same garden they never once asked me to help water. I closed the email slowly. The garden wasn't theirs. It never had been. And now the land was already being converted into a horticulture therapy site for elderly women through Elderhaven, an idea I supported with every bit of my heart. That afternoon, Helen noticed I was quieter than usual. "What's on your mind?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "Nothing I regret." She grinned. "Good. Regret is for people who let themselves be walked on." That night, in my small apartment with the courtyard lights shining through the window, I lit a candle next to Jake's photo, not out of sadness, but out of honor. They thought I'd fall apart, but I didn't. I finally stood up. And for the first time since that terrible day at the airport, I felt the world shift in my favor. Because when a woman who's been overlooked her whole life finally chooses herself, the story doesn't end, it begins. The moment Mark and Tanya disappeared beyond the security gate, something shifted inside me. Not grief, not panic, but a strange steadiness I hadn't felt since before Jake passed. They had taken my luggage, my ticket, and every ounce of dignity they believed they controlled. But they hadn't taken my memory. They hadn't taken my mind. And tucked inside my purse was something far more powerful than a boarding pass. The small envelope Jake and I had called our break glass in case of fire fund. Inside, folded neatly, was the business card of a lawyer named J.R. Wade, a friend of Jake's from decades back, a man who handled our mortgage, updated our will once upon a time, and made a promise Jake always repeated. "If life corners you, Blake, You go to JR. He'll get you out. Well, life had cornered me. I left the airport without a word to anyone, climbed into a cab, and gave the driver an address I hadn't spoken aloud in years. Monroe and Wade Law Office. The building hadn't changed much. Same brick walls, same faded sign. But stepping inside felt like choosing myself for the first time in months. JR recognized me before I even said his name. His face softened with the kind of genuine care I hadn't seen from my own son in years. "Blake, I'm so sorry about Jake. What can I do for you?" My answer came without wavering. "I need to rewrite my will, immediately." JR blinked, taken aback, but nodded. "Of course. Tell me what you're thinking." "I want Mark and Tanya removed entirely. Every account, every property, everything with my name on it. I want it out of their reach." There was no hesitation in his eyes now, only resolve. "Are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything. For the next hour, we dismantled the old will line by line. The house Jake and I had paid off. The farmland my father left me. The accounts we built slowly for 40 years of shared meals, shared bills, shared dreams. All of it was reassigned. Not out of spite, not anymore, but out of clarity. I left everything to an organization called Elder Haven, a nonprofit dedicated to helping seniors who'd been abandoned or financially mistreated by their families. Women like me, men like Jake's old army buddy who never got visitors, people who deserved dignity more than apologies. Then I added a final instruction. The documents were to be sealed, protected, and only accessible by JR and the executor I designated. Not Mark, not Tanya, not anyone who shared my blood, but not my respect. When I stepped out into the sunlight afterwards, I didn't feel vindictive. I felt clean, steady, my own again. But I never imagined how loud silence could be until the day my son finally learned what I had done, and the consequences thundered straight back to my door. Grief doesn't enter quietly. It doesn't knock, doesn't pause in the doorway waiting for permission. It storms inside and sits right where joy used to live. That's how it felt the day Jake died. One moment, he was humming an off-key tune while searching the kitchen cabinets, and the next, the world became unbearably still. They told me it was a stroke, massive, immediate, irreversible. Words meant to soften a blow that no language could cushion. We had been married 42 years, and suddenly, every room in the house echoed with a hollowness I didn't recognize. The quiet was suffocating, like someone had pressed a pillow over the life we built. People came by in the days after his passing, carrying flowers and casseroles and memories I was too numb to fully absorb. Someone told me he once fixed their fence without accepting payment. Someone else said he had laughed at the same joke for 20 years and never once pretended to be tired of it. I nodded my way through their stories, trying to breathe, trying to look like a woman still tethered to the world. But when the house emptied at night, it was just me in that silence. His slippers still sat by the bed, His toothbrush remained beside mine. His jacket hung on the hallway hook like he'd be back to shrug it on and ask what I wanted for dinner. I crumbled slowly, not all at once. Some mornings, I didn't get dressed. Other mornings, I went through the motions like a ghost rehearsing old routines. And every time I passed his favorite chair, my chest tightened, as though grief itself had hands. Weeks later, Mark finally came by. His hug was quick, distracted, the kind you give out of obligation. Tanya stood behind him, offering that polished smile she uses when she wants to look compassionate without having to actually feel anything. "We think you should get away for a little while," Mark said, like the idea had come to him while picking up groceries. "A change of scenery," Tanya added, clutching her designer bag. "You've been cooped up here, and we're planning a family trip anyway. It could be good for you." The idea of leaving Tennessee, of seeing sunlight on water, and hearing something other than the quiet felt like lifting my head above the grief for the first time. I didn't hesitate. I wanted to believe they were doing this for me. So I sold the last piece of jewelry Jake had given me, a gold band from our 10th anniversary, to help pitch in for the trip. They called it a shared effort. I called it hope. But now, sitting in that airport, all of it seemed painfully clear. I hadn't been invited as family. I had been invited as funding. And the betrayal cut deeper than the grief ever had. But the true confirmation, the moment the mask fully slipped, came not at the airport, but in the days leading up to that trip when the lies were already woven into place. I didn't realize I was being abandoned until the moment was already over, until the sound of Tanya's suitcase wheels faded and the space beside me emptied like someone had quietly erased me from a photograph. Nashville International Airport buzzed with the usual symphony of rolling bags, loudspeaker reminders, and hurried footsteps. But around me, the noise felt distant, muted, as if I were underwater. Mark and Tanya had just stepped into the priority security line with matching first-class tags dangling from their luggage. They looked polished, perfectly put together, the kind of travelers who act like airports were built exclusively for them. And me, I stood there clutching a printed itinerary that would turn out to be nothing more than a prop in a show I didn't know I was cast in. Tanya turned halfway, barely enough to acknowledge me, and said something that sliced through me with the sharpness of a paper cut. Small, painful, and humiliating. "We only booked you a one-way, Blake. You'll figure out the rest. You've got a phone. Sell it if you have to." She delivered the words like she was commenting on the weather, not discarding a human being. Mark didn't say anything. He didn't even look at me. He adjusted his sunglasses and followed her. My purse suddenly felt too light, my sweater too thin. I reached for the ticket that should have guaranteed my place next to them, only to realize the airline agent hadn't been joking when she said, "Ma'am, this reservation shows no return flight for you." Her tone held that syrupy politeness reserved for minor disasters and elderly women on the verge of tears. I had never been one to cause a scene. Even now, standing along with travelers flowing past like a river around a stone, I kept my composure. But inside, something cracked, a recognition, sharp and unwelcome, that I had not been brought along out of love or grief or even pity. I had been included because I had paid for part of the trip. And now, with my usefulness exhausted, I was no longer needed. My fingers trembled as I checked for my phone, the only valuable I had left in my possession. My luggage, the bag I'd packed with care and hope, had never even made it out of their trunk. I sat down on a bench by the large windows and straightened my back. I would not cry in front of strangers, but I would not sit helplessly either. In the pocket closest to my heart, hidden away for years, was a business card. A lawyer Jake had trusted. A man who once told me, "Blake, if life ever corners you, you come to me." Life had finally cornered me, and I was done standing still. But before I made that call, another memory rose up, the one I'd been trying to outrun since the funeral. The moment my world first began to unravel.